Today we're checking out probably one of the most affordable PA systems that I've ever seen. This is the ProReck Club 6000 series. It comes with two 15-inch subwoofers, a total of four 6-inch line array speakers, all the cabling you need. It comes with Bluetooth. It has multiple ins and outs. You get all of that for just $650. For two subwoofers and four speakers, that's a pretty insane deal. I used them at a couple of shows recently, and I'm going to share my experience with you. Long story short, if you are a DJ or a band on a budget, I don't think you're going to find a better deal than this. Two subs and four speakers for that price is insane. With DJs, I think this is a no-brainer. This is an insane deal, especially for DJs. With bands, I think these will work great within limitations, so I am going to go over some of the limitations with this. But I did two different shows with this PA system. The shows went great. I am going to share some of my experience with you and give you some tips and make sure that this is the right system for you. I do want to say many thanks to ProReck for sending this over for me to check out for the channel. However, just as always, all the opinions in this video are my own. And if you do decide that this system is right for you, you can get 11% off using the promo code ScottYuleMusic at checkout. So this system just became even more affordable with that 11% off discount. Details will be down below in the description. That's enough of the intro. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and let's go ahead and get started. So first up, let's go over some of the ins and outs that you get with this, as well as how to connect it. So you have two different subwoofers. One of them is passive and one of them is active. The powered subwoofer is going to be what is going to send the signal to everything. The active subwoofer does require power, but everything else does not. So just really quick, the inputs and outputs that you get. So let's just start from the top and work your way down. You have the cutoff frequency for the subwoofer. This means what frequencies do you want to go through the subwoofer, and then anything above that will pass through to the tops. So you can set yours accordingly. And you also do have the volume of the subwoofer as well. I do find that I find myself bringing it basically up to max usually when I use it. You also do have a phase inversion if you do need it on the subwoofer. I didn't really need to use that live at all. Next up, you have your master fader right here. Something else that I do find, it is definitely better to bring up the master fader higher and then send it a weaker signal. That's something that I found while using this live. I'll address that here later. This has a built-in MP3 player or Bluetooth player. This is the master fader for that right here. I'll get to that here in a second on how to connect that. Here are your main inputs. Most of you are going to use the XLR or 1/4-inch inputs coming from a mixer or something like that. But you do have a spot for RCA or 3.5 millimeter, especially for like DJs and stuff like that. Next down here, this was an interesting choice. They give you two mic inputs, so just separate inputs, and you have separate control here for it, as well as an echo for an effect. Having to go over to the speaker to adjust the volume, I'm not sure how often I personally would use that, but the option's there. You do have XLR mix out if you want to pass the signal onto other speakers, but these right here are what you are going to use to output to your tops. Remember, this subwoofer is going to send signal to everything else, so these will connect to the tops. And then this speaker out right here is going to be what you use to connect to the other subwoofer. Last but not least, the MP3 player or Bluetooth player. You can push mode and set it to the mode you want. So if you set it to line, they'll set it to the USB or SD slot. However, I personally like using it with Bluetooth. So once it is set to Bluetooth and it starts blinking, you should be able to find ProReck on your phone, for example, and it pairs. And then as soon as it is paired, it will stop blinking. And remember, your master knob for the Bluetooth and MP3 is right here. That's basically it for the ins and outs. Let's get this thing connected. You do have to connect a few things. It doesn't come pre-assembled. You do have to assemble the tops a little bit. It was pretty easy to follow. There was one issue that I had. This is not going to make sense until you get the unit itself, but this bar right here and then this bar right here, you want to connect them into the same slot with the same screw. At least I did. I had trouble getting that one to fit. Again, that's not going to make sense until you get this and start putting it together, but I figured I would show you that as that was the only part that gave me trouble. After that, it should be pretty straightforward. You put the poles into the hole in the subwoofer, and then you put the tops on top, and you're ready to go. Now let's get this thing connected. So if you're already familiar with how to set up and connect a passive PA system or a system that has the subwoofer is active and then everything else is passive, you can skip to this spot on the screen. However, if you're not familiar with that, here's how you set it up. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to connect your mixer into the inputs right here. It can accept 1/4-inch or XLR. Now, you do get quite a few cables with this setup. So remember, the active subwoofer is going to be what is going to send signal to everything else. So the first thing you're going to look at are going to be the really long cables. There's two of them. There is this 30-foot Speakon cable, and then there is also the 33-foot 1/4-inch speaker cable. So with the Speakon cable, you're going to plug that in to the output of the active subwoofer, and you're going to run that over to your other subwoofer, and that's going to go into the input of the passive subwoofer. I'm doing this all in one camera just so you can see how it works, but I'll show you an actual setup when I actually set this up with my band here in a second. Now the second one, the long 33-foot 1/4 inch cable, it's a speaker cable, but it's 1/4 inch. You're going to plug that in to one of the outputs of these 1/4 inch outputs. So since this subwoofer over here is on the right, I'm going to plug this into the left one, and I'm going to send that over here to the other side, and that's going to go into the tops for the other speakers. So we're doing the long cable runs first. And you can see that here when I actually am getting footage of me using this live. You can see I have two cables doing a long run from the active to the passive. The speak-on cable and the 1/4 inch cable are both running over to the other side of the stage where the passive speaker and the passive tops are. The speak-on cable is going into the input of the subwoofer, and the 1/4 inch is going into the top into one of the inputs. It doesn't actually really matter which one. Now you have a 6-foot 1/4 inch speaker cable, and then you have two 8-inch 1/4 inch speaker cables. With the 6-foot one, you want to come out of the active subwoofer, and you want to go into your tops that are on top of your active subwoofer using that cable. And then using the 8-inch cables, that's how you're going to connect to the other speakers, just like this. And now all the subs and speakers are connected properly. As far as specs, with the 6000 model specifically, you have 15-inch subwoofers. One of them is powered and one of them is passive. And you get 4 of the 6-inch line array speakers. The frequency response is rated from 50 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. As far as power, it's rated at 3000 watts peak, 2000 continuous, and then 1000 for RMS. So 3000 watts, that is peak. That's basically how hard it can be pushed at the max. Continuous and RMS are the most important ones. That's kind of what you get on average over an extended period of time. I will also post the rest of the specs on the screen now. Go ahead and pause the screen if you're interested in anything else. As far as for how many people you could use a system for, they say up to 400 people and 80 meters squared. I personally would say for no more than 300 people, although since it is a line array, it is able to throw the signal pretty far. Every speaker is going to have its limitation. I personally wouldn't say more than 300 for a DJ. And being more conservative a little bit for a band, I would say around 200. You can get over that, and I'm going to go over that with my experience. But just conservatively, if you're playing with a band, I would say around 200, 250 people. As far as pricing, the ProReck Club 6000, which is the series that I've been reviewing, is currently listed at about $660. And don't forget, you get 11% off if you use promo code ScottYuleMusic, so that'll drop it under $600. And I will have links down below if you want to check this out for yourself. There are 2 other similar options. There is the ProReck 4000, which comes with a single 18-inch sub instead of 2 15s. I personally like having the speakers on top of the subwoofers. I like to use stands as little as possible, especially at bars where people trip over these things all the time. That's my personal preference, but the 4000 is listed at $635 right now. And if you do want to get a little bit bigger of a system, they do have the ProReck 8000, which comes with 2 18-inch subwoofers, as well as a total of 6 of the line array speakers on the top. That one is a little bit more at about $1,200. Again, you can get 11% off on all of these with promo code ScottYuleMusic. I do think it is worth going up to the 8000 for bands, and I'll go over that here in a second. But all 3 of those are options for you. Plus, they have other stuff on their website as well. I will link to those main ones down below in the description. Okay, like I mentioned, I used this at 2 different shows. The first show that I did was a bar show, which is a perfect environment to test this out in. It was very quick to set up, which was very nice, especially with the new PA system. It was very easy to set up. It didn't take very long at all. Something interesting that happened is while I was sound checking, this guy came up and asked, "What are these speakers?" I told him it was called ProReck, and he goes, "The clarity that you get from these is awesome." I didn't ask him to say that or anything. He came up to me and said that just as I was sound checking. So that was definitely a good sign to hear. So I am going to show you some of the footage of us performing. I do want you to just keep in mind this was shot on the phone. You know, you're not going to get a full bass response, especially with this, and just shot from a phone, you're not going to get the true tone of it. I mostly want you to hear the balance of it, of how well balanced it can sound. But do also keep in mind, if the camera moves at all, if you stand further out, it's going to sound different. And as you move, it's going to sound a little bit like a phasing type of thing. So just keep that in mind. Listen for the balance this. Don't use this as a complete tone test. And then this was also a slow night for us, so there's not that many people that are like on the dance floor or anything like that. I know all of our profile pictures and our cover photos are of us playing on massive stages. I'm no exception, but we all know what it's like that some nights are slow. This just happened to be a slower night, but here you go. So this is my 90s cover band, 90% 90s. We do a 3-piece, and I think this song is a great one to show the variety. Our drummer plays lead kazoo in our band, and this is just a good balanced sound with this song. Sometimes we perform with a live bass player, sometimes we have bass in the track. For this show, we have the bass in the track, but every instrument is doing their own thing on this one, so I think it's a good one to show you the balance.
Is it your birthday or something?
Here's a couple other songs in a similar style. So the camera is right in front of the speaker for this one, therefore it's going to sound a little brighter. Here's some country. Here's some R&B. And here's some metal and rock. So I do think that sounded a little bit bright. I think we could have brought the guitar down at least a little bit more. The thing that I learned at this show is what you should do is you should turn up the master on the ProReck system itself, and then from our mixer, we should send a quieter signal. If you need more power, I suggest turning up the speaker. That's something that I learned for the next show, which I'll get to here in a second. But overall, for that first show, I think it worked out really well, especially for a bar gig. Now, the next show was for an outdoor event, and this was actually perfect for what I wanted to test it out for. It was for a private event. It was for a company party. They wanted a 90s band, so they hired us to do it. There were only supposed to be like 60 people there at this event, but the area that we were performing in could definitely fill up to about 300. I hadn't played there before, and I was like, this is actually perfect to test what is the range of this system. As we were setting up, I was like, as long as the sound fills up the grass area, I'm completely happy with it. So the cables were long enough. This was a pretty decent sized stage, and what most people using this size of a PA system are going to use. That was good to see that the cables were long enough. Before my bandmates showed up, I just did a quick sound check. Lucky for you, that's what I like. Just pausing the audio so YouTube doesn't grab this video for copyright stuff. Hopefully YouTube isn't mad at me for demoing this with an actual song, but even as far back as I was, you can still even hear the thump of the kick drum. Even if it's shot on my phone, you can still hear it. I was definitely impressed. So that was just Bluetooth from my phone going into these, which sold me as a DJ for sure on these. I think these are a great option for DJs for up to about 300 people. However, with bands, you can't quite push it as hard without kind of taking it to the max. I think at this show, we did push it to the max that it would probably be at, but we did get some footage of that show as well. Nice strong low end, and our harmonies blended really well. And my band actually specializes in 3 dudes doing female songs in falsetto.
I know, it sounds just like the Cranberries, doesn't it? Spot on.
This is probably our band favorite song to cover.
Keep flipping the gift. This hotline is on.
Here's a good range test for you. Our stage manager, Larissa, was past the grass, so you can see how it sounded from back there. But I think right here you can tell that we were pushing it to its limit, and my microphone was up a little too hot, and you can hear that it was kind of distorting a little bit because we pushed it as loud as we could.
Got nothing to do with my selection. 36, 24, 36? Yeah, only if she's 5'3".
Every speaker has its limit. My microphone was set too high, but everything else sounded good at this show. But that can happen if you push a speaker too hard. As far as the tone, the subs are really nice. It definitely sounds good with the 15-inch subwoofers. I do personally find that 18 is kind of the sweet spot if you really want a good thump with it. But with my band, it totally worked with the 15-inch subs. I do say that as far as the tone control, I do feel like they are a little bright, and I do wish there was some sort of EQ setting on it, but you know, they're passive speakers. It is what it is. But I do find that they lean towards the bright side. Having said that, I think the tone was completely usable. You're missing a little bit of like the low mids, in my opinion. I don't think it was a deal breaker. It was just something that I noticed. At that second show, we definitely pushed that thing to its limit. I had the sub and the master all the way up. That was as far as that system could go. Every system has its limit. Don't be the guy in the comment section saying, I use this at a 1,000-person event and it didn't get that far. Don't be that guy. These are meant for up to, I would say, about 200 people, possibly 300 at the max. If you need a bigger system, you will have to upgrade. Again, don't be that guy. As far as pros and cons, I think pros, I mean, the biggest pro about this is how insanely affordable it is. I like that they give you everything that you need. All the cables and stuff like that are included. It does throw the signal pretty far, especially for how small the system is. I do like that it gives you multiple options for like inputs, especially XLR or quarter inch or RCA or 3.5 millimeter for DJs and for bands. I think it's a very well set up system. The Bluetooth is also very nice. As far as the cons, I personally don't like running a speaker cable and the cables in front of the stage. That's just me and my obsession of having a clean stage. It is not a deal breaker for most people, and at those shows it definitely didn't matter because we had that stage. If you need longer cables, you can always get like a 50-foot cable and run them, you know, behind the drummer and all the way around. But it can also be a pro because you only need power at that active subwoofer spot. You don't need power at the other subwoofer and the other top. That's a pro or a con, so I probably should put that somewhere in the middle. It's up to you to make that decision. The biggest con for me is that there is no EQ control on the system itself, but the big one is that I wish that I had a separate input for the sub and a separate one for the tops. Not a deal breaker, but it is very nice to have your own subwoofer channel and then your own main channel. Again, you can't be too picky at this price point. I think the main con is that it is a little bit bright. That's the main thing that I felt with it. But again, tone is just so subjective. That guy came up to me and said he loved the clarity of it while I was setting it up. I personally would like to hear a little bit more of those lower mids. Could I tell that it was missing? Yes. Could the audience? Let's be honest, probably not. The 99% of the audience isn't going to be able to tell that. My normal PA system is about a $3,800 PA system, and my singer, he has about a $4,000 system. Can I tell that those higher end systems are nicer sounding? Sure, especially in those lower mids. Is it worth spending 6 times the price, literally 6 times the price, to get that sound when, let's be honest, the audience is not going to care that much anyways? That's your call. That depends on how much of a tone purist you are, what your budget is, and how big of an audience you're trying to fill these speakers for. I definitely think that this is a usable PA system for DJs and for bands. Again, making sure that you're not playing for a 1,000-person event or something like that. For DJs, absolutely, I think this is a great option. For bar bands and smaller venues, 200 to 300 people, also a great option. I don't think this is meant for someone who is a tone purist or who is playing bigger events. After that first show, as we were packing up, my drummer came over and he asked me, "What did you think?" And his answer to this was probably the best way to sum this up. Because I told him, I was like, oh, it sounds pretty good. I was like, they're a little bit bright, but I think it's still pretty usable. And my drummer says, he's like, yeah. He's like, we played a show. People enjoyed it. We got paid. We put so much focus on tone sometimes. We just forget the audience enjoyed it. We got paid at the end of the night. Everyone had a good time. They booked us again. The show went well. And I said, I was like, yeah, especially for like $600. And his mouth dropped when I said that. He turned, it was like a slow head turn, and his mouth dropped. And he goes, $600? And I said, yeah. He's like, dude, if I was a band and my budget was $600, this is the system that I would buy. So I think that's a great way to wrap up this video. If you guys found this video helpful, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It truly does help support the channel and feed the YouTube algorithm gods, and I would appreciate it. If you do also want to support the channel using those links down below, and then using promo code ScottULMusic, benefits both of us. You get 11% off of your order, and it also supports the channel at no extra cost to you, and it actually saves you money. So it's a good win-win for both of us. 2 other videos of mine to check out. I do have a video going over my compact in-ear monitor rack setup, and since that video came out, I did actually review recently a portable digital mixer that only takes up 1 U of rack space. It's the PreSonus mixer. So if you're looking to have a mixer, like a setup for your band with in-ear monitors and the mains and stuff like that, both of those videos will be good videos to check out. You can check out both of those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at ScottULMusic. Again, many thanks to ProReck for sending this over. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.